oh, self-ID would be a threat to women. If anything, not having it is a threat to some women.
So I think people are just they're not courageous enough to just say to Abigail, you're talking absolute shite.
Subscribe to my new Substack, Jack Jewell Uncut. Here you will see my exclusive, uncut, untamed, and unashamed takes too controversial for YouTube. This includes early access to all videos and bonus footage seen nowhere else, including this episode with Helen Joyce. Link on screen and in the description.
And then you'll have people who go, oh, like self-ID is a threat to women. It's like, okay, well, here are the stats from like the dozens of countries that have already adopted self-ID. There's no proven threat to women at all. There's no evidence for this position at all. We go, no, refuse to look at that, won't do it. Oh, self-ID would be a threat to women. And then everyone goes, well, actually, stats prove that that isn't true. If anything, not having it is a threat to some women, mainly trans women, right?
It's like, I mean, there's like about 5 statistical fallacies in there. So one of the things that happens in countries that allow people to change their legally registered sex, whether that's self-ID or not, is that you straight away break the statistics. So Ireland, as you know, has self-ID. But the result is that men who commit sex crimes when identifying as women get recorded as women. So how can we?
Yeah.
Like, you know, they've broken the language and the statistics registration that we would require to see what they're saying. I mean, that's the most fundamental thing. And then again, there is some bloody evidence.
Yeah.
Like, we know that there are specific men who went into women's spaces because they were allowed to and then committed crimes. And they're like, yeah, well, women commit crimes anyway. Like, and then that last bit, I love that it is a risk to some women, namely trans women. I mean, they're men.
Yeah.
Like, what? That's just linguistic fuckery of the highest order. Like, you know, that should be beneath anyone who's had a first course in philosophy. So that's, I mean, the example of that one that I loved the most, I just thought it was absolutely classic. Do you remember that character called Veronica Ivy? Rachel McKinnon was his previous name.
Oh, God.
Canadian, amazingly philosopher who did cycling and won some women's races.
Yeah.
He said that he wasn't just female, he was biologically female because he was female because it said it on his paperwork. And because he was biological, he was a biological female.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, come on, like, give me some good competition here, would you?
Yeah, and he was.
You said, do I get tired of it? Like, this is so stupid.
The very language of you were born and I'm not biological somehow, like, I don't think I'm a cyborg. So, like, this idea that, like, oh, you're not a biological woman. Well, I am a woman. That's a fact. I am female. So all my identity records, my racing license, my medical records all say female, right? And I'm pretty sure I'm made of biological stuff. So I'm a biological female as well.
He was on a talk show, and I mean, the host must have just thought, what the hell do I say now? Like, putting people in the mainstream media in those scenarios, who knows, maybe some of them are completely captured, that they just think it's great. But I've seen Abigail on other podcasts, you know, saying this, you can absolutely change sex. Like, these people they're denying reality, they're not acknowledging biology. And all the hosts are like, yep, and, you know, bear this in mind, these are kind of very socialist, lefty podcasts. But still, like, the fact that you can just sit there and nod along when...
Well, I think they've been through courses in universities that have told them things that they haven't carefully examined. Like that, you know, sex is socially constructed. And you're like, well, you know, do you think that's true for baboons? Like, do you think that's true when, like, there's a job of chicken sexer, you know? Like somebody who, because it's hard to tell the sex of little chickens, but they only want the female ones to grow and then they just kill the males. So there's a job of being very good at telling what sex chickens are. Like, is it socially constructed there? Like, maybe they think it is, I don't know. And then they say, oh, you know, the idiots think that if it's socially constructed, it's not real. But like, look at money. Money is socially constructed and it's real. You're like, yeah, but money isn't like sex. You know, two things may be different. This is a possibility. Like, I've ended up having to dumb down my logic so much. Like, I end up making logical statements that are like, things can be different. There is such a thing as a false analogy. Or, you know, I used to have to think like, you know, the fallacy of the excluded middle or something when I was doing mathematics. And now you're like, A implies B is not the same as B implies A. Like, we're at that level. I remember saying at a talk shortly after my book came out that I really didn't think when I was doing a PhD in mathematics that the most useful thing that I would ever have learned to say confidently was, if you allow men into women's spaces, they cease to be women-only spaces. Like, that's the level of logic we're at here.
That's it.
So I think people are just they're not courageous enough to just say to Abigail, you're talking absolute shite. Like, you're pretty passable and you're very fluent, but it's absolute toss pottery that man is talking.